Let me ask you this though, bro. In the grand scheme of things, right? Do you think that we talk about like the level of competition,
Mhm.
right? And we all people always talk about the glory days of the NBA, especially when you talk about LeBron versus the Michael Jordan era, right? And so when you look at it, you had back in the Jordan era, you had the Jordan's Bulls three-peat two times, right? And then you had the bad boys go two time back to back. And then you had the Celtics that also did multiple. So you had all these multiple repeat champions. But by the time Jordan had really arrived, and as far as being the winner, Jordan, it was just him, right? And so my question for you is this though, man, is does this level of parity where you see a lot of possible one time champions. So Joker, who won one, not a back to back, and he although Joker won three MVPs, right? And you see that
Honest.
Giannis, multiple time player of the defensive player of the year, multiple time MVP, one championship. Joel Embiid, MVP, no championship, right? And so when you look at this level, does this parity that we're seeing speak to the level of competition of today's game versus maybe a more top heavy competition? Because everybody always talks about, oh, these players couldn't play in this particular era, or this player could play in this particular era, though, man. But based off of just winning championships, though, bro, does this what we're seeing speak to the difference in competitiveness, the how much more developed the players are? Like, what is that? Does that mean anything to you?
No, I just think it shows the level of how hard it is to win a championship. And I don't think the competition was any less back in the day, because you could damn near get into a fight in Michael Jordan's era. You know what I'm saying? They were beating him up. Like, they had Detroit was set to like try to hurt him. So and it was almost not even frowned upon. The refs weren't calling it, whatever the case may be. And we look at how competitive this particular playoffs was, with how much was not getting called and stuff like that. So I just think it's hard to win a championship. And I think that Jordan was an incredible player at the time, and they just knew what it took to win. It makes the three-peat even with how Golden State won four in, the level of time that they did. It makes that just that much more incredible, because we're not seeing those type of dynasty programs right now, because it's that hard. And what it's also showing is that, shoot, in order for you to be successful, you got to spend some money.
You
I mean,
healthy.
yeah.
Well, you got to spend money these days, right? And so I think that the big thing about it to me is that I think that this is where when we talk about like the rules being differently, right? I think that the rules these days make it more challenging for you to have a team together where your core guys are together longer than maybe about 5 years, right? Because I think that the Warriors are the last team that I know of that's had a pair of players with Draymond and Steph be together as long. And I think that it's just because even then, when the Warriors were starting to win, they still had Steph on like his first contract that was after his rookie year, after he had already started getting the ankle injuries and everything like that. So they were more of the anomaly. And I think what they came across was just something that was so very special circumstances. And the flip side of that is I think that the Celtics, because while they are organically put together, and they're probably the only other pair of duos that I've seen where a team has drafted them, and these guys have been together for more than 5 years together. Now you start to talk about, all right, they're introducing these aprons into the scenario and all these other things. And I think that it is becoming more challenging for you to spend money, but spend money where that run really, while you may have guys that were for 5 years, like the Celtics have been together longer than 5 years, but they didn't win the multiple championships within that ring. So it's like it's hard, like you said, it's hard to win a championship, period, when you think that Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown been playing together for like 8 years almost, though. And even with that being said, you got one championship out of that while you're paying, while you have the biggest payroll in NBA. And now it's like that was the closest I thought that we would have seen to maybe a Golden State like dynasty run. And it's like before you know it, when it don't work, now you got to start shuffling. So I'm watching for Boston to see how much do they really change their roster and how much do they keep the same? Because it's hard. And if you thought that your format worked just 2 years ago, are you really that far removed? Has the game changed that much to where that format no longer applies? So,
Right. But I think this year has shown two things: how good or how important the regular season is. Because I'm telling you,
mm,
these home court advantages are key. And the other thing is how important the play-in is. Because you think, right? You remove the play-in, Golden State's not even in, and they don't beat
that's-
Houston. You know what I'm saying? So, a lot of times you have like LeBron has classically kind of like coasted through the regular season and then try to make a big push toward the end to get a seeding that they want that's favorable and then go from there. But seriously, it is truly important. I don't know that OKC wins if we didn't have home court advantage against Denver.
mm.
I truly believe that. Now,
I
in
think
the
that this one is again.
Eastern Conference was different because Indy went to whoever they played. They went in their home and was it Cavaliers they played
Yeah, they dusted the Cavs off, walked
in
them
yeah, but in Cleveland though they beat them both
in
times.
Cleveland.
And then
They
the
didn't have
same
Derrick Garland,
true,
but they
but
still walked him.
right, but the same thing with New York, right? New York and Boston, they walked them in Boston,
Well, no, they didn't walk him in Boston. They walked him down though.
but then
They
they win
they
one.
they they
They win. Then they win the first game in Boston.
No, I think the last game was the only blowout. The
Nah,
first two
I'm not.
games in
What I'm
Boston.
saying is winning. I'm not talking about the
Yeah,
walking.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I'm talking about, yeah, but you're right. The first two, Boston was up by 20 in both games and came back and lost both of them.
Yeah,
But I think that, yeah, I think that definitely though, man. I totally, but being healthy is definitely even shows why it's even more critical, right? But I think that this is again, we talked about this before. I think that I'm definitely watching because this playoffs and how this season end has huge, huge implications, unlike any that I've seen in quite some time, of what next year will start to shape and look like, though, bro.